Livestock farming is a key sector in the agricultural production of the Republic of Armenia. It constitutes one of the main income sources for the population in rural areas of the country. Through livestock keeping, the rural population of Armenia customarily earns its living by the sale of milk, processed dairy products such as yogurt or cheese, as well as by the sale of meat and trading of livestock. Successful livestock farming highly depends on the availability of fodder resources. Natural fodder areas, such as pastures and grasslands, cover 39% of the overall administrative territory of the country and are of high importance. However, to secure its nutritional value, preserving the rich biodiversity of these ecosystems and the services they provide is the key for a prosperous business through livestock farming. Yet, field fodder production in Armenia is underdeveloped and needs more attention to reach its full potential. Cattle farming is the #1 activity option for means of subsistence here because resource-wise, in the past it was considered a cattle farming region. That is, there is no industry here. Naturally, livestock farming together with crop cultivation are the only means of subsistence.
Overgrazing was a continual problem. There was a problem with remote pastures. Those areas were not used because of distance. They were very far, within 12 to 15 kilometers distance from the community. There are quite remote areas.
Natural pastures and grasslands are highly important from an economic, social and environmental perspective. They're also home for wild genetic resources of many cultivated crops and ensure their conservation in the landscapes. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, all land and livestock managed communally before went through the process of privatization. This abrupt change left little room for a smooth transition. It rather resulted in non-sustained management of lands. Soviet infrastructure, once built for large-scale collective farming, became non-functional and partly ruined over time. Currently, fodder production is a rather big issue in the Republic of Armenia, therefore livestock farming is not properly developed. The root cause of this are the present socio-economic conditions in the Republic of Armenia, which explain the situation with underdeveloped fodder production. That is, cultivation of fodder crops are rarely implemented in the communities. Thereby, the problem of fodder provision mainly depends on meadow fodder production. In this region in particular, the landscape you can see in the background on the left side is typically degraded landscape, which was mostly caused by inappropriate management, improper pasture use, non-use of proper management procedures. Because of overgrazing, the vegetation cover was damaged both quality and quantity-wise. As a result, vegetation cover is increasingly diminishing, causing soil erosion, changes in proportion of different species, and reduction of biodiversity and productivity of pastures. Edible plants more and more start to disappear, leaving space for poisonous and harmful plants for the livestock. This in turn induces intoxication and an incline in the quantity and quality of milk and meat production. In this community, most of the population is unemployed. To cover the costs of living, the population is mainly involved in small-scale livestock keeping and land cultivation. There were hard times for the country after the newly gained independence. Changes led to poor economic development, which heavily affected the income and social conditions of the population. From a global perspective, pasture and grasslands are of primarily economic, environmental and social importance. Hence, the sustainable use and preservation of these ecosystems should be a high priority objective for all stakeholders. The government of the Republic of Armenia and the NGO Strategic Development Agency, SDA, are closely cooperating with the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, GIZ GmbH, in the scope of the GIZ Sustainable Management of Biodiversity in the South Caucasus program. The main focus of this cooperation is the introduction and implementation of sustainable pasture monitoring and management practices in Armenia. Since 2010, Community Agricultural Resource Management and Competitiveness Project is jointly implemented by the World Bank and the Armenian government with the key objective to support communities in livestock farming to make their activities more effective and efficient. And pasture lands are the main resource in livestock farming and should be the focus of attention. In this sense, in the scope of the project, we select communities and identify reserves which have not been used before and facilitate their effective use. So our first priority is pasture lands.
With the support of Armenian and international experts, GIZ has developed two new approaches for sustainable pasture management which complement each other. Firstly, we use satellite images to monitor and assess objectively the condition and the grazing capacity of large grassland areas. Our second approach is to enable people from rural communities to take over responsibility for monitoring and managing their grasslands in a self-reliable manner.
The Armenian NGO Strategic Development Agency, which is implementing a project on livestock development in the Sunik region since 2008, is working in close cooperation with GIZ on the topic of community-based pasture management since 2013.
The overarching goal of this cooperation is to support the Armenian government to improve pasture management approaches, regulations and procedures. A new monitoring model was introduced in the scope of this project.
Until autumn 2015, the project was already working in 24 communities in Sisian region of Sunik Mars and had expanded its activities to Tawash Mars in North Armenia, addressing another 8 communities. The first mentioned approach of the project significantly reduces the costs, increases work effectiveness and provides accurate data. It is used for analyzing the total area of pastures. As you can see, we have the map of the land cover of the Republic of Armenia and the relevant methodology we have used for this purpose. We have the land use findings through GIS and remote sensing methods. Having the layers, our colleagues can later update them by using relevant computer-based software and produce the data which is crucial, as I already mentioned, for planning, management and monitoring activities. Later, it can also be used for identifying cases of overgrazing and several other issues. An assessment of pasture management practices was conducted in Armenia within GIZ Sustainable Management of Biodiversity South Caucasus program. The assessment revealed the challenges with the introduction of practical pasture management mechanisms in rural communities. It's about supporting male and female farmers in improving their income, economic potential, management capacities and skills in a sustainable manner.
Livestock development sector is one of the strategic directions of agricultural development in the Republic of Armenia, and it assumes the need for comprehensive management of natural resources. In view of natural ecosystem management, it is highly important the accurate assessment of their state based on monitoring data.
Based on the next approach, a conceptual operational model for community-based pasture management was elaborated. This model is characterized by a low-cost and easy-to-use approach. Grounded on international and local expertise, a set of applicable tools were developed and tested, including a pasture monitoring manual and pasture management guidelines. Sector-related government decrees of Republic of Armenia were the basis for development of the mentioned documents. However, when GIZ started elaboration of guidelines on sustainable pasture management, which I believe was a very important event for the country, since proper use of pasture lands is not only a project or community objective, but the country's objective. So pasture lands should not lose their full value even after use. In this sense, the guideline developed by GIZ, which I believe should be enforced as a legal act. Nowadays, there are certain pasture lands in the community that are heavily overgrazed due to vast amount of conditional cattlehead, while pasture areas are limited. With the support of the GIZ program, local governmental authorities now sit together with farmers' representatives and discuss about pasture-related issues such as the condition and possible usage of pastures in remote areas. The integration of main stakeholders is crucial as it supports mutual understanding on pasture management practices and minimizes conflict. In this meeting, the Community Council is discussing about the season for livestock grazing in Brnakot community of Sunik Mars, which is widely known to be between May and November. Other topics covered are the installation of water systems or how to efficiently communicate between local authorities and livestock keepers upon new regulations on grazing areas resulting from pasture monitoring results. By living in the village, we all know that the main occupation of the village population is cattle farming and field crop cultivation. In order to produce good results, first of all, we need to know our nature and pasture lands. By working in the community, we faced a problem which we couldn't resolve with the help of any veterinarian or other relevant specialist. The problem was the loss of cattle at the community because of intoxication. How to conduct pasture monitoring based on the developed monitoring manual is being explained in a pasture monitoring fieldwork led by Professor Gagik from the Armenian National Agrarian University. Together with the local working group, he's going to the pasture which is to be monitored. Firstly, a plot for monitoring needs to be defined. Now, the training group starts to fill the relevant data sheets regarding the pasture management assessment and state of pasture. The obtained information is then being stored on a computer to allow calculation of corresponding indexes, such as susceptibility to erosion, pasture degradation, and development of management recommendations, as well as analysis over time and compare results. However, based on monitoring findings, the management plan was developed for our community and implemented during the recent 1 to 2 years. Although 100% implementation was not ensured, but certain progress was made. For instance, in our community, monitoring findings revealed that pasture lands located adjacent to the villages are misused, while there are other pasture lands in highlands which are not used and should be considered for use based on the management plan. The study results of the vegetation cover helped to identify areas where vegetation cover is harmful for the livestock. Based on the monitoring results of our village lands, measures were taken in some areas, such as sowing activities, which were done to ameliorate pasture land conditions. After field measurements are made, we upload the information into the computer. The reason we upload field measurement data to the computer is that last year, in 2014, for example, we conducted monitoring in the selected compartment to identify the issues, and based on the collected data, we found it appropriate to develop a rotation plan for pastures. The following year, that is, this year again, we will conduct monitoring of the same compartments to see if there is any difference. So the reason we keep all data in the computer is to track the progress or regression over years in relation to the issue. The main objective is to control the process. For example, this year we conducted monitoring, developed a pasture management plan and used pastures according to the plan, so we must see whether it gives results or not. The management plan of the pasture areas is the basis for their sustainable use. The state of different pasture lands can be distinguished and mapped accordingly. Different pasture conditions require different forms of management. Also, the cattle head quantity needs to be defined based on correspondent pasture allowable grazing pressure. The final step is then the preparation of rotational plans based on the findings of the monitoring. Depending on the village location and pasture peculiarities, the cattle of the village move to the field from 2 points, that is, from the lower and upper zones. The cattle in the lower zone today is in the pastureland Kelans N2, and the cattle in the upper zone is in the pastureland Sulukar 18, as it's spotted on the map. According to the time scheme, for example, the cattle of the lower zone, which is grazing in point N2, will continue grazing in that area for a week starting from today. While the cattle grazing in the pastureland N18, spotted on the map, will graze there for another 3 days. Afterwards, based on the information I receive every day, I should move the cattle to a different pastureland according to the map. A contracted pasture keeper, assigned by local authorities, assures the compliance of the rotational arrangement. Follow-up analysis already indicate that farmers are directly impacted by the newly established scheme, as the milking capacity of their livestock and the overall cattle meat productivity have increased. Experiencing the economic, environmental and social revenue from applying sustainable rather than exploiting pasture management practices provides the rural population with an important understanding of the significant value of ecosystem services such as pastures and grasslands.
Պատճառը իմանալով հանդերձ հիմա մենք օգտագործում ենք հերթափոխային արոդներ եւ
Now, as we know the reason, we use pasture lands in rotation, and those pasture lands where edible plants have disappeared, we leave those pasture lands to rest and return to their normal state. So we spontaneously found the answer to the critically important and bothering issue. For me, this was one of the best achievements last year, that I was able to solve this problem for my community. The pasture management program in the Republic of Armenia shows how livestock farmers can be sensitized for finding a healthy relationship to nature that is both beneficial to the environment and society at the same time. It was and still is a long way to go, but the benefits and satisfaction for all who took part and will take part in the future in this GIZ program speak for themselves.
Afterwards, I participated in the training on sustainable pasture management, where we learned a lot of things. Now we have a working group in the community composed of young women and men, and also some elder women who were very interested and took part in regularly organized workshops and trainings, and realized how useful it is to acquire knowledge. For example, now they know why the cow returns with non-sufficient amount of milk, the factor of long-distance road. There are a lot of issues, ranging from plant germination to haymaking.
There are big farmers here. Each of them keeps their own livestock. Based on the community decision, we graze the cattle in rotation so that the grass is not heavily trampled and damaged. Thanks to this support in a short period of time, we already have significant and obvious outcomes in a positive light. For example, compared to the milk production capacity last year this time, we recorded an increase of 2 to 3 litres of milk daily per cow this year, and it's already a promising quantity of milk on an annual basis.
We see the importance of this project as well as in continuation of it.
After piloting is successfully completed and evidence attests that pasture management has positive impact, we certainly, on biodiversity, effectiveness of livestock farming and agriculture in general, would consider setting out a legal framework for the methodology and applying it as a normative approach in the management aspects. And I'm sure that the project outcomes we can identify or record in the process of this project implementation would be very useful in terms of applying the outcomes of the project in the masses country-wide and be extended not only to our neighbouring countries but in other countries alike facing similar problems.
Ունեն եւ ովքեր բախվում են նմանատիպ խնդիրների հետ